Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the most familiar thing in your life has never actually been what you thought it was. Not money, not society, not reality. You. The voice inside your head. The feeling of being someone. The sense that there is a you sitting somewhere behind your eyes, watching the world unfold. It feels undeniable, more real than anything else. You can doubt the government. You can doubt history. You can doubt religion. You can even doubt reality itself. But there is one thing most people never question: the experience of being conscious, the feeling that there is a self inside, a thinker behind every thought, an observer behind every experience, a silent presence watching life happen. For thousands of years, philosophers assumed this observer was real. Religions built entire worldviews around it. Cultures gave it different names: soul, spirit, mind, self. But despite centuries of investigation, nobody has ever found it. Scientists have scanned the brain, mapped neural activity, measured electrical signals, tracked thoughts forming in real time. Yet nowhere inside the brain is there a central observer. No control room, no inner captain, no hidden person sitting behind your eyes. The strange thing is that consciousness feels unified. It feels as though there is a single entity experiencing everything. A continuous self, moving through time. The same you that existed 10 years ago. The same you that will exist tomorrow. But what if that feeling is misleading? What if consciousness is not a thing, but a process? What if the self is not an entity, but an experience? What if the observer you have trusted your entire life is something your brain continuously creates? Because the deeper scientists study the mind, the stranger the picture becomes. The brain appears to contain countless independent systems operating simultaneously. Systems for vision, emotion, memory, language, prediction, movement, decision-making, each performing specialized functions. Yet somewhere within this chaos emerges a single story. A story that says, I. A story that says this is happening to me. A story that says I am the one in control. But stories can feel real as nations, as real as money, as real as identities. And throughout this series, we have already encountered a disturbing possibility. Many of the things humans experience as fundamental truths turn out to be constructions. Free will, human nature, identity, social reality. What if consciousness belongs on that list? What if the greatest illusion is not the world around you, but the one looking through your eyes right now? And if the self is an illusion, who is reading these words? If consciousness feels so real, why would anyone question it? The answer is simple. Because the closer we look, the harder it becomes to find the thing we call the self. Most people assume consciousness works like a theater. There is a world outside. Information enters the brain. And somewhere deep inside, an observer watches the show. A central self, a witness, a thinker, someone experiencing everything. This model feels obvious, almost impossible to doubt. After all, every experience seems to happen to someone. Every thought appears to belong to a thinker. Every decision appears to belong to a decision maker. The feeling is so natural that questioning it can seem absurd. Yet this intuition creates a problem. If there truly is a self inside the brain, where is it? Neuroscience has spent decades searching. Researchers have identified regions involved in memory, regions involved in language, regions involved in vision, emotion, attention, decision-making. But nowhere have they discovered a central observer. There is no command center, no inner screen, no place where all information comes together for a hidden self to inspect. Instead, the brain appears to function more like a vast network. billions of neurons interacting simultaneously, countless processes operating at once, no single location in charge, no obvious headquarters. This discovery surprised many scientists because it contradicted the way consciousness feels. Experience feels unified. The brain looks distributed. Experience feels centralized. The brain looks decentralized. The gap between these two observations became one of the deepest mysteries in modern science. How can a collection of separate systems create the feeling of being one person? The philosopher David Hume noticed something similar centuries ago. When he searched for the self through introspection, he reported finding thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, but never a self separate from those experiences, only the experiences themselves. The observer seemed strangely absent. Centuries later, neuroscience encountered a similar puzzle. The brain contains systems processing color, other systems processing sound, others tracking movement, others generating language, others predicting future outcomes. Yet none of these systems appears to be the self. They are simply performing functions, and together they create the seamless experience we call consciousness. This raises an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps the self is not something producing experience. Perhaps it is something produced by experience. Consider a whirlpool in a river. It appears stable, persistent, like an object. But a whirlpool is not a thing. It is a process, a pattern emerging from movement. Remove the flow, and the whirlpool disappears. Some scientists believe consciousness may work in a similar way, not as a fixed entity, but as a dynamic process continuously generated by the brain. The self may not be a permanent object hiding somewhere inside your head. It may be a story created moment by moment, a model, a simulation, a useful representation. The brain constantly builds models of the world, models of other people, models of future events, models of danger, models of opportunity. Why would it not also build a model of itself? In fact, evidence suggests that it does. Your sense of identity changes throughout life. Your memories change, your beliefs change, your personality changes. Even your physical body replaces most of its cells over time. Yet the feeling of being the same person remains. How? Perhaps because the brain continuously updates a narrative, a story connecting past experiences to present experiences. A story that creates continuity where constant change exists. This does not mean the self is fake. It means it may not be what it appears to be. A map is real, but it is not the territory. A model is real, but it is not the thing being modeled. Likewise, the self may be real as an experience while being fundamentally different from what most people imagine. And the deeper researchers investigate consciousness, the more this possibility gains attention. Because again and again, the brain reveals systems, processes, interactions, patterns, but never the observer everyone expects to find. The strangest possibility is not that consciousness exists. The strangest possibility is that consciousness exists without a central self at all. And if that is true, then who exactly is experiencing your life right now? If there is no central observer inside the brain, why does it feel as though one exists? Why does consciousness seem so unified? Why does every experience feel as though it belongs to someone? The answer may lie in one of the brain's most important functions: prediction. The brain is often described as a machine for processing information. But many neuroscientists now believe that description is incomplete. The brain is not simply reacting to reality. It is constantly predicting reality. Every second of every day, your brain is constructing models of the world before sensory information even arrives. It predicts what you will see, what you will hear, what you will feel, what will happen next. Your experience is not a direct window into reality. It is a controlled hallucination constrained by incoming information. A best guess, a simulation updated in real time. This process is astonishingly efficient. Without it, survival would be impossible. The brain cannot wait for perfect information. It must constantly anticipate. And to do that effectively, it requires models. Models of the environment, models of other people, models of possible futures, and perhaps most importantly, a model of you. Imagine trying to navigate a complex world without knowing where your body ends and the environment begins, without understanding your own intentions, without tracking your memories, goals, fears, and actions. Coherent behavior would be impossible. The brain therefore constructs a simplified representation of the organism it is controlling. A model that says, this body is me. These memories are mine. These actions belong to me. Over time, this model becomes so familiar that it feels like reality itself. But familiarity is not proof. Many perceptual illusions feel real. Optical illusions feel real. Dreams feel real. False memories often feel real. The feeling of certainty is not always evidence of truth. The self may be another example, not a deception, but a useful simplification, a user interface. Just as a computer desktop hides the complexity of billions of electrical operations, the self may hide the complexity of countless neural processes. You do not experience neurons firing, you experience thoughts. You do not experience predictive models. You experience a world. You do not experience distributed computation. You experience a single perspective. The interface is useful precisely because it simplifies reality. But problems arise when the interface is mistaken for the system itself. Consider split brain experiments. In certain medical procedures, the connection between the brain's hemispheres was partially severed. Researchers expected dysfunction. What they discovered was stranger. Different parts of the brain appeared capable of acting independently. In some situations, one hemisphere would generate explanations for actions initiated elsewhere. The brain seemed willing to invent coherent stories, even when it lacked complete information. This suggested something remarkable. The feeling of being a unified self might not be the source of behavior. It might be a story created after the fact, a narrative continuously assembled to maintain coherence. This possibility becomes even more unsettling when we examine decision-making. Experiments repeatedly show neural activity, predicting choices before people become consciously aware of making them. The brain begins preparing actions. Then consciousness experiences the decision. The conscious self may be arriving later than it appears, not issuing commands, but interpreting events, like a press secretary explaining decisions after they have already been made. None of this proves that consciousness is an illusion, but it does challenge the traditional picture. The self begins to look less like a ruler and more like a narrator, less like a commander and more like a storyteller, a system whose primary role may be creating coherence from complexity, making sense of countless processes operating beneath awareness. This would explain why the self feels unified even when the brain is not, why experience feels continuous even when perception is constantly reconstructed, why certainty feels natural even when understanding is incomplete. The brain is performing its most important task, maintaining a stable model of reality. And perhaps the most important part of that model is you, or rather, the story your brain tells about you. The technical failure may not be that consciousness is broken. The technical failure may be that we mistake the model for the thing itself. We mistake the story for the storyteller. And once that confusion begins, the illusion becomes almost impossible to see, because the very thing trying to understand the self may itself be part of the simulation. The possibility that the self is a model often sounds disturbing. Many people hear the word illusion and immediately assume something is unreal, meaningless, False. But that conclusion may be too simplistic. After all, maps are not reality. Yet maps are useful. A map does not contain mountains, rivers, cities, or oceans. It is a simplified representation, and precisely because it is simplified, it helps us navigate the world. Perhaps the self functions in a similar way. The brain faces an impossible challenge. Every second it must coordinate perception, memory, emotion, language, movement, prediction, social interaction, and countless other processes. The amount of information is overwhelming. No biological system could consciously track every detail. Simplification becomes necessary. The self may be one of the brain's greatest simplifications, a compressed model that allows an organism to function efficiently. Instead of tracking billions of neural events, the brain creates a single reference point, a center of gravity, a narrative identity, a practical answer to the question, who is acting? The answer does not need to be perfectly accurate. It only needs to be useful. Consider money. Money is not valuable because pieces of paper possess magical properties. Money works because it functions as a useful model for exchanging resources. Likewise, the self may function as a useful model for organizing experience. Its value may come not from being literally true, but from being functionally effective. This perspective transforms the question. The goal is no longer to discover a hidden observer. The goal is to understand why the brain creates one. And the answer may be surprisingly elegant. A stable self-model allows long-term planning. It allows learning. It allows responsibility. It allows cooperation with others, and it creates continuity across time. Without such a model, life would become fragmented. Every moment would feel disconnected from the next. The future would lose meaning. The past would lose relevance. The self acts as a bridge, a mechanism connecting experiences into a coherent story. And stories matter, not because they are perfectly accurate, but because they help organisms navigate complexity. In this sense, the self may be less like a thing and more like a tool. One of the most sophisticated tools evolution has ever produced. The problem arises only when we forget that it is a tool. When we treat the model as something absolute, permanent, unchanging, independent from the processes that created it. Because then we begin defending an illusion of certainty, and certainty can become a prison. Awareness offers a different possibility. The ability to see the self as flexible, adaptive, evolving, not a fixed object trapped in time, but an ongoing process, a living pattern, something continually recreated with every experience. This perspective does not diminish human life. It expands it, because if the self is a process rather than a thing, then change becomes natural. Growth becomes natural. Transformation becomes natural. You are not trapped inside a permanent identity. You are participating in a process that never stops unfolding. And perhaps that realization is far more empowering than the belief in a fixed self could ever be. Perhaps the greatest mystery of consciousness is not that it exists, but that it feels so familiar. You have lived with it every moment of your life, every thought, every memory, every emotion, every dream, every fear, every hope. Consciousness has been the constant background of every experience you have ever had, and yet it remains one of the least understood phenomena in the universe. We can study galaxies billions of light years away. We can split atoms, map genomes, build artificial intelligence. Yet the simple question, what is it like to be conscious, still resists complete explanation. Perhaps that is because consciousness is not merely something we observe. It is the medium through which observation itself occurs. Trying to fully understand consciousness may be like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The instrument and the object are inseparable, and perhaps that is why every attempt to locate the self encounters the same paradox. The observer searches for the observer, The mind investigates the mind. The story attempts to understand the storyteller, and each layer reveals another layer beneath it. Not a final answer, but a deeper mystery. Yet, mystery is not failure. Mystery is often where understanding begins, because the purpose of inquiry is not always to eliminate uncertainty. Sometimes its purpose is to reveal how much larger reality is than we imagined. The deeper science explores consciousness, the stranger the universe appears. Not less meaningful, more meaningful. Not simpler, more profound. Because consciousness may be the place where matter becomes aware of itself, where the universe begins examining its own existence, where billions of years of cosmic evolution produce a question capable of asking, "Who am I?" And perhaps there is something beautiful about not having a complete answer, because certainty closes doors. Curiosity opens them. The self may not be what it appears to be. Consciousness may be far stranger than our intuitions suggest. The observer may be a process rather than a thing, a pattern rather than an entity, a story rather than a character. But the mystery remains. You are here, experiencing, wondering, questioning, aware. And perhaps that is the most remarkable fact of all. Not that consciousness provides answers, but that consciousness allows questions to exist in the first place. So the next time you hear the voice inside your head, the next time you feel the presence of a self behind your eyes, pause for a moment and consider a possibility. Perhaps the observer you have been searching for your entire life was never hidden. Perhaps it was never a thing to be found at all. Perhaps it is something that happens, moment by moment, experience by experience, thought by thought, a process unfolding across time, a pattern emerging from complexity, a mystery still writing itself. And perhaps the most important question is no longer, where is the self? But what becomes possible when we stop looking for it?